أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة. All praise is due to Allah, and may His peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To all of our viewers out there, may the peace and blessings and the mercy of Allah be upon all of you. Or as we say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome again to Distilled Wisdom, and thank you for joining us in this episode. Inshallah, today we will continue what we have been doing for the past few weeks, and that is take some of the verses of the Quran and see what they talk about and see what some of the lessons that we will learn. There are numerous references to animals and insects in the Quran. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions mosquitoes, sometimes spiders are mentioned. There is a dog mentioned. There is a whole chapter that named the chapter of the elephant, Surah Al-Fil. And to the people of Mecca, these are the people amongst whom the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived. Every now and then they would hear these things and they would say, what kind of a book is this? What kind of a God would be talking to us in what is considered to be a holy book about spiders, about mosquitoes, about flies, about this and about that? And they said, this is not befitting to the majesty of God. Why does God mention any of these insignificant things in the Quran, in His holy book? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in response to this, says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَسْتَحِي أَن يَضْرِبَ مَثَلًا مَا بَعُوضَةً فَمَا فَوْقَهَا. There is no shame in giving the parables or the examples of a mosquito or any. Believers will believe in it, and those who reject faith are going to reject it. So the point is that there are numerous references that the Quran makes to small animals, to insects, and what have you. And today, inshallah, we are going to discuss such a verse where the hero of the story is actually a small insect. Now, most of the time, the heroes of the stories of the Quran are usually humans, and amongst the humans, they are the messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except in few places. However, our small hero today comes from Surah An-Naml, a chapter that is actually named The Ants. And in it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, حَتَّى إِذَا أَتَوْا عَلَى وَادِ النَّمْلِ قَالَتْ نَمْلَةٌ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّمْلُ ادْخُلُوا مَسَاكِنَكُمْ لَا يَحْطِمَنَّكُمْ سُلَيْمَانُ وَجُنُودُهُ وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. It's telling the story of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, Solomon alayhi salam, when it said that he was going with his army. And the Quran documents this part in actually one or two verses, but this part is in one verse only. حَتَّى إِذَا أَتَوْا عَلَى وَادِ النَّمْلِ. And at length they came to the valley of the ants. قَالَتْ نَمْلَةٌ. An ant spoke and said, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّمْلُ. O ye ants, ادْخُلُوا مَسَاكِنَكُمْ. Go into your dwellings or go into your inhabitants, lest you be crushed by Sulaiman and his army while they know not. The end of the story. This is the part that the Quran documents. Sulaiman alayhi salam, Sulaiman, may the peace of Allah be upon him, is walking with his army. They come into a valley. The valley, there are colonies of ants. But Sulaiman and his army gives a warning to the colony, and it tells everybody to go inside their dwellings, lest you be crushed by Sulaiman and his army while you perceive not. There are so many lessons, inshallah, that we can learn from this small ant. What does it begin with? It begins by an interesting observation. Usually insects learn by imitation. With the exception of ants, ants learn by instruction. Now, why do we have to mention this? Because this is such a crucial point to mention. Insects learn by imitation. They grow, they see other insects do, They imitate, they copy, and that's how they live. That's how they come to know about things. With the exception of ants, the ants do not learn by imitation, but they learn by instruction. And that is why in this particular surah, what is going on? Allah is telling us that this ant is instructing. So the story here is really not symbolic. The story here is literal, because science tells us today that ants do learn by instruction. They do not learn by imitation. This is point number one. So Sulaiman and his army are going. The ant sees them, and then the ant calls upon the other ants. قالت يا أيها النمل. You know, they say that this ant is such a great, effective communicator. Remember a few weeks ago, we spoke about communication. And we said that we humans have got so many tools to exchange information and to become more effective communicators, but our communication is absolutely, or is still poor at this. We have faxes, we have telegrams. I don't know if they still use telegrams out there or not. You have got overnight parcel, that, you know, overnight post office, overnight delivery, and what have you. And you think that we would be better communicators at this point. What happens is that we are not communicating, but we are only exchanging information. Our communication needs a lot of improvement. In any case, so this ant is an effective communicator. What does it do? It begins by getting the attentions of everybody. قالت يا أيها النمل. O ye ants, pay attention, listen to me. Why would we say this? See, brothers and sisters, remember what we said the other day. When it comes to our minds and it comes to our hearts, people can only go in there when they are invited. You can only be invited to my thoughts, and you can only be invited to my feelings. So unless I make my thoughts known, unless I make my feelings known, it is very difficult to know how I am feeling or what is that I am thinking, unless I communicate this. Sometimes we communicate it in our facial expression. You smile, you look sad, you frown your face. But I am communicating my feelings on my facial expressions, because language is not only what is verbal, but language is body language. You've got. But this ant, the very first thing that it does is it gets everybody's attention. قالت يا أيها النمل. Once it has everybody's attention, it makes its message very clear. ادخلوا مساكنكم. The point is, go into your dwellings. And then it explains why لا يحطمنكم سليمان, lest that you be crushed by Sulaiman and his army or his soldiers while perceive not. Listen to this. It got the attention of the ants, and then it made very clear what message it wants to communicate. ادخلوا مساكنكم. Go into your dwellings. And then also it made it very clear as to the danger that is awaiting them if they do not listen. And what does she say? The reason why I say she, because in Arabic the word that is used here is namla. It's a female. Female. That is feminine. It's mentioned in the feminine. And she said to them, if you do not listen, now that I have gotten your attention, I am telling you about this danger coming in Sulaiman and his army, you are going to be crushed. But also there is something else that we learn about this small ant. The ant is not selfish. The ant could have saved itself. End of the story. Too bad you did not see it. You were not paying attention. You were too busy collecting the food. Not my fault. But that's not what it did. The same goodness that it wanted for itself, it is also seeking for its fellow ants. Many times, our survival depends on our own. This is exactly what this ant is doing. The ant is saying that my survival depends on the survival of my colony. I do not want my colony to be destroyed, because the destruction of my colony, it also may mean my own destruction. So this ant was not a selfish ant, but rather what happened is, I am going to save them so that I am also saved in the process. Many times we think that ants are annoying, and they can be annoying. You see a good number of them, you kill it, you come back tomorrow, and there's still, greater numbers are coming out. Some of them are killer ants, by the way. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them they fly. But it's the sting that we all remember about the ants. So what happens is, this is all we know about them. These annoying little creatures that no matter how many times you kill them, they keep coming back. That's all we know about them. But there is more into them. Now we will take a break. And if you join us again, inshallah, we will learn more about them. So stay tuned. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Most Merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace and blessings and the mercy of Allah be upon all of you. And welcome back to Distilled Wisdom, where we are talking about some annoying little creatures that we know as ants. We're talking about the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, and we're talking about this little hero, the small ant. The story says that Sulaiman alayhi salam was his army. At length they came to the valley of ants, when one ant called upon the rest of the colony, قالت يا أيها النمل, saying, O ye ants, ادخلوا مساكنكم, go back into your dwellings, لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده, lest you be crushed by Sulaiman and his army, وهم لا يشعرون, while they know not. When we're talking about this little hero, we said that usually when we speak about ants, we all know them to be these annoying little creatures that no matter how many times you kill them, they keep coming back. Just some little observations about very persistent. They are very persistent. They said that one time, Napoleon, French general that you know of, as he is thinking of conquering the world, he was leaning on a stick when he saw an ant coming up. So he shook the stick and he banged it once, and the ant dropped down. But then the ant started coming back again on his stick. So he dropped it again. He banged the stick again and the ant was dropped. And the ant started coming back again. And he looked into this and he said, well, I want to see how many times can this ant do. And he kept doing this. And then all of a sudden he said, this ant is so persistent, and here I am giving up because I am unable to win, a number of battles here and there. And he was into his thoughts, and then all of a sudden he's paying attention to his stick and found out that, the ant was at the very top of that stick. Very patient, very persevering. And we try to kill them in all ways, but they keep coming back. So that's what we know about them. At any case, so this ant, we said that ants do not learn by imitation, but rather ants learn by communication and instruction. And the Quran is documenting this. And remember that this is a recent scientific discovery, yet the book of Allah mentions it 1400 years ago. The ant, we said, also is an effective communicator. Clear, and then there were consequences. She said the message is ادخلوا مساكنكم, go into your dwellings. Why? لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده, lest you be crushed by Sulaiman and his army. وهم لا يشعرون, while they perceive not. And it seems, even though the story does not tell us what has happened, the colony was saved. But there is also here a beautiful statement that the ant makes. وهم لا يشعرون, while they know not. Sulaiman and his army, these are people who are tall, like us humans. And usually we can't even see this far, and sometimes we don't even pay attention to see this far. Sometimes we don't even notice that we are stepping on these little bugs and these little insects. So it said to them, the Sulaiman and his army, They may crush you while they know not. Why is it telling them this? They said that ants, when they communicate danger to each other, they either go into an attack mode or they go into a defensive mode, depending on what is the type of danger. There are certain types of danger where you need to be in the attack mode to protect your colony, and there are some types of danger where the colony is in danger, but you need to go on a defensive mode. So she said, by the way, Sulaiman and his army are not intending to harm you and go into the defensive mode. They've actually, a recent scientific discovery speaks about this. Speaks about, I believe it's called pheromones. This is what the excretion of the ant that is up in the air to warn each other as to what type of danger is happening. Is it going to be the attack mode or is it going to be the defensive mode? At any case, this ant said, وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, and they perceive not. We can learn a lesson here from this ant. See, brothers and sisters, sometimes people may do us harm, but they really don't know that they are doing us harm. People sometimes may make statements about us, but they really did not intend to insult us. People may physically do things, and they didn't know that they were doing this to us. And what happens is that sometimes we immediately go into the attack mode. We hear a word that remotely sounds offensive to us, and what do? We go into the attack mode. Somebody makes a joke, and we are immediately insulted and offended by it. And what do? We go into the attack mode. And sometimes people may even do us harm, and they are not even aware that they have done us harm, because they were not paying attention. It was just an accident. They didn't know that it happened. The question is, how do you react? Do you immediately go into that attack mode? Because when we go into the attack mode, immediately what happens is that it complicates. Very slim. You go into an attack mode, and I don't even know what I have done to you. I wasn't even paying attention. I said it. Maybe you even heard it wrong. Maybe I said it wrong. But then we go immediately into an attack mode. So this small ant is teaching this great lesson. Said, by the way, these people may accidentally kill you. They're going to crush you. So what do? Do not go onto the attack mode, because they're not even aware that they are doing this to you. That is so beautiful. When you go into the attack mode, sometimes you do it at the expense of making a fool of yourself. There is a story about a family, a father and his children. They got on the bus. I believe this happened in California. So when they were on the bus, the kids were screaming and they were crying and they were yelling, and the father was not doing anything about it. The father just had his head between his hands and he was just looking down. And the people on the bus were very bothered that this is very rude. Why don't this person discipline their child? Why don't they do anything to these children? So what happened? One brave soul amongst the people that were on the bus said, "Excuse me, why don't you do something about your children?" So the man, he lifted up his head and said, "I am sorry. I don't know what my children are doing. We just came from the hospital and their mother died, and this is how they are reacting." How do you think that person is feeling at this point? How do you think they feel? This is what they have done. And they thought that here they are, they went into this attack mode and they went into this offensive. But just, why don't you just, ask, "Excuse me, your children are screaming in this, are they okay? Is there anything wrong with them?" Easily offended, and we're easily insulted, and we only complicate matters. So be like that ant and say, these people may end up crushing us, and by the way, they don't even know that they are doing it. Not that they are cunning, not that they are negligent, it's just that they don't know. It just did not cross their minds. And many times that happens. If somebody says a joke that you find to be offensive or insulting, inquire before you are offended. Inquire before you are insulted. Inquire before you go on your attack mode, before you go into the offensive, and just say, what has happened? Gather information. Ask more questions so that you do not end up complicating the situation further, or that you end up making a fool of yourself, as the story was this guy on the bus. So what happens? Sulaiman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed him with the ability of knowing the speech of the animals. Because animals do communicate with each other. We call it the birds are singing, but the birds are really talking to one another. The dog is barking, but the dog is saying something. The cat is meowing, but it is also saying something, and what have you. So at any case, Sulaiman alayhi salam hears what is being said. So what happened? How does he react? فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِكًا مِنْ قَوْلِهَا. So Sulaiman alayhi salam cracks a smile. فَتَبَسَّمَ from this speech. What part of speech? What part of speech would put a smile on the face of the Messenger of Allah? Is it the part of the speech where she says, O ye ants, go into your dwellings, lest you be crushed by Sulaiman and his army? It seems, and Allah knows best, that Sulaiman alayhi salam cracked a smile because of the very last statement that the ant made. وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. While they perceive not. It put a smile on his face, on the face of the Messenger of Allah, due to a statement that was made by an ant. What is that statement? We may be killed with Sulaiman and his army, and guess what? They don't even know that they are doing it to us. He loved the idea of this ant making an excuse for himself and for his army. That, you know what? This may happen to us, but Sulaiman doesn't really mean it. His army and his soldiers don't really mean it. So Sulaiman alayhi salam put a smile on his face due to this beautiful statement that was made by this little ant. This is the beautiful story. Like I said, it's only 2 sentences, or to be more lessons that we have, some of the lessons that actually we have said, amongst other lessons we could have, mentioned as well. But the point was to provoke and to look into the wisdom, even if it may be coming from an ant. And with this, we come to the conclusion of this part of our program. Very grateful that you have joined us. And inshallah, we hope that you're finding this to be informative and joyful, that you enjoy our company as much as we are enjoying your company. And inshallah, until we meet next time, we say so long and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.